So, John, I've seen a lot of movies that deal with the Holy Grail, but I really don't know anything about it. Can you give me some background on that?
Well, the nice thing about the Grail is it's whatever it means for you. And all we can really say with any confidence that would apply to every version, basically, is that it's something that contains. It has to do with being able to hold something generally referred to as a spiritual context. Okay, and so if you go in to some of the legends that surround the Grail, it's frequently brought in by angels that are singing in a procession with all manner of food.
So, is it something that is delivered by God?
Well, actually, that's an interesting question because if you go into the account of von Scharfenberg, you see that he relates that it's considered to be that there was a stone in the crown of Lucifer that was, during the war in heaven, knocked out of his crown, and it fell to earth. And it was out of the stone that fell from the crown of Lucifer that the Grail was fashioned. So that's an interesting point, because you go, well, what could that possibly mean? Well, what that would mean within the context of the esoteric Christian stream is that there are pre-Christian mystery streams that would be considered pre-Christian and by that very nature Luciferic, or being guided by different angels than might be guiding Christianity, and that it points towards that there were certain aspects of ancient culture that were melded into what became esoteric Christianity, and that there were certain angels that rekindled their relationship to the Christ impulse.
Now, is Lucifer a actual metaphysical experience?
It's a being, actually a host of beings. And consequently, it's said that Lucifer, when God created man, he asked the angels to bow to man, his creation. And Lucifer, who is so enamored of God, he refused to bow to man. And so, from this sin of pride, he fell from his high estate. And so, he's a protagonist. He helps the Luciferic beings act as protagonists in a supersensible way through temptation to strengthen our spirits. It's through the resistance of the opposition that we become strong.
So, the devil is, in essence, a positive force?
It's up to us to make it so. It's not appropriate for the impulses of Lucifer or of his dark counterpart, Ahriman, as he would be called in ancient Persia, to be inner soul impulses in a human being. We are meant to hold them at bay with our own individual nature, which was the gift of Christ.
Now, John, you also talk about the Knights Templar. Can you tell me who they actually were? Not necessarily individuals, but as a group.
Well, as a group, basically what happened is during the Crusades, the Knights Templar Order came into being under the provision that they were to protect the pilgrims to the Holy Land. But we know from Rudolf Steiner and other researchers that in addition to that, being warrior monks, so to speak, that they were carrying an esoteric impulse that was brought about through their development in the Holy Land. And so what this particular impulse is a impulse of that tied into the doctrines of Dionysius the Areopagite and his traditions of angels as they pertain to the esoteric streams and the inner meditative content of esoteric Christianity. There's really so much I in future will cover that more thoroughly.
Now, John, you use the word esoteric a lot. I know what it means to me, but what context are you using it in?
Well, that there's an exoteric or external teaching, and the inner secret teachings are considered to be the esoteric. And so consequently, most schools of spiritual philosophy have an inner and an outer teaching. You know, it's like you have the temple of wisdom, and this temple is surrounded by a courtyard. And then, of course, beyond the gates of the courtyard, well, that's the barnyard, right? And that's where most of us live, is in the barnyard. But in coming to understand what this might be, if you look at the meditative path, it says that you want to be able to create a sacred space to have a spiritual life. And if you do that in your meditations, what that does is it gives you something that you can carry into your daily life, and that allows you to have a spiritual hut, as it were, that's a dwelling for your spiritual impulses. And that can provide a sort of buffer against all the failings that one might find in oneself when one meets the world.
Now, John, when I was in college, I lightly studied the teaching of the yogi Maharishi. Well, it's been so many years I don't exactly remember, but he was the same gentleman that the Beatles went to.
Yeah, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi.
Correct. And can you tell me about how that would interface with your beliefs?
Okay. Well, I think that if you put this within a context, and I work a great deal with history. I taught cultural history in a master's college level program. And what I tried to convey to the pupils is that there is a geographical mystery, that there is a difference between what comes from the West and what comes from the East. And that provides a context for us, because the Grail impulse is that inward content, that inner meditative content that we find develops so beautifully in the East. Whereas in the West, you have the Arthurian Knights. And that's more of an externalized cosmic mystery. That has to do with going out into the world and what they fight dragons and demonic forces and hold them at bay from the populace. So that you have this cosmic wisdom, the cosmic Christ, from the external aspect of it, and then you have the inward meditative content of the Grail, and the two of them coming together in the Brotherhood of the Holy Grail as it developed through the Middle Ages and carried its impulse into the Knights Templar and beyond that into Rosicrucianism.
So have the East and the West influenced each other?
Oh, very greatly. A lot of that was lost with the destruction of the Library of Alexandria by Islam. But that was a huge suppository of world wisdom that was originally assembled under the impulse that came from Alexander the Great.
Are you familiar with a gentleman named Aristophanes?
Yeah, sure. And the birds. Yeah, that whole the impulse that came through the Greeks is really so central to the Western understanding of things, and also to the East, because a great deal of those impulses were carried east and helped develop the science and astronomy in the East as in the West. But with Aristophanes, you start tying into the impulse of theater and the impulse of the power of speaking, which would really tie into the Grail stream when you see that it was the troubadours that carried the legends of the Holy Grail, and the trouviers in northern France and troubadours in southern France.
John, back to the Library of Alexandria. Where do you think we'd be today if it hadn't been destroyed?
Probably in worse trouble than we're in right now. It's often the case that the difficulties that we would experience from the adversaries, especially from Ahriman would want to bring stuff to us prematurely before we develop the necessary soul forces to be able to bring it to a wholesome result, see? Whereas Lucifer would want to tie us to the traditions of the path, want to follow rules and regulations that were perhaps appropriate for certain people in the 7th century, but that may not make a whole lot of sense in our modern world.
We also talked about the Knights Templar. How were they related to the Knights of the Round Table?
Well, again, if we look to what the Knights Templar have, they're carrying this impulse from the East, that intermeditative content. And when you confronted a Knights Templar, they were willing to fearlessly confront their opponents, and they would not retreat. They were not afraid of death because they considered themselves that they were already dead, which is kind of hard for people to relate to. But once you've gotten to the point where you think of yourself as being a mere shadow of your true being, then it's not as big of a challenge to be able to develop the hard forces of courage. But in looking at how they would relate to the Knights of the Round Table, that's an ancient cosmic impulse, as I've shared with you, tying into the mysteries of the Druids and the Celtic mysteries of the British Isles. And that's very much a cosmic star wisdom.
What else should I ask about?
Let's see.
About the first temple or the second temple. Did you want to go into that?
No, that would deserve a much wider thing. We could also carry this further and say, well, are there any other streams that participate in this Grail mystery?
Okay.
Yeah.
Rich, you can't touch anything up there again.
Yeah, sorry.
And we got 6 minutes of 10 seconds.
How much
Okay.
on here?
I don't see where that one is.
Should be right at the bottom.
I don't see it. The numbers are so small. They have 14. It looks like 14 minutes. Does that make sense?
No.
I just don't know your
Does
time.
anything?
We should be still rolling.
We are still rolling.
We've got 5 minutes
5 minutes, okay.
on that one.
5 minutes on this one here.
Okay. All right, we're still rolling.
Okay, you're going to ask me, are there any other streams that can be connected to this Grail mystery?
Okay, do this. Just do a clap right in front of it so we go. Good. Richard?
John, are there any other streams that are connected to this mystery?
That's a very good question. Yes, you can also come to mind that there's this synthesis that happens within the Grail stream, that there's these various cultural streams all coming together through Christianity. And so in the north, you have the mysteries of the Vikings, right? And the mysteries of courage. And they would walk across a precarious bridge at the Extern Stones in Germany. And if they fell, it would be to their death. So they had to be able to meet with forces of courage. And they were bearing impulses, mystery impulses, that could be led all the way back to the Black Sea and the Scythian mysteries that were guided by the great initiate Scythianos. Also, you find a context for bringing in the streams that come from ancient Egypt. And there's even one of the medieval Grail legends speaks of that particular impulse coming out of Egypt, which is a very singular stream. One of the students of Mark, the Apostle Mark, was a priest who was head of one of the mystery temples in northern Egypt, who later was given the name Ormus. And in Ormus, you have that inner Christianity, that inner spiritualized Christianity. There was a synthesis of the ancient mysteries of Egypt. But a lot of that, of course, was lost to most people's purview historically because of the dominance through the region that developed much later with Arabism and the Islam shutting down a lot of these impulses. But their seed was able to be carried forward within the Grail stream.